Hi, and welcome to Advisor Outsourcing session on understanding and preparing your data in IO for a sale for the Change the Game Digital Conference 2020 from IntelliFlow. So our objectives today are all around key data that will help you maximize the price you can obtain for your business. By the end of this session, we'll be looking to give you a high-level understanding of the current marketplace, understanding what data is currently most influential in affecting the price you can obtain for your business, understanding some of the key reports within IO to extract data on what they can show you about your business. We'll be looking over a few useful Excel formulas and functions, and these will also help you link up your data, and talking around how to set about cleansing your data. With COVID having such a massive impact on the world, increased regulatory requirements and increased fees within the financial services sector, now more than ever financial advice business owners are looking to sell. The good news is there's no shortage of firms looking to acquire these businesses. The traditional method to value a business as a multiple of recurring revenue is still used to some degree, but increasingly we are seeing the use and consideration of annual profits or earnings before tax, depreciation and amortization. This session is only going to look at one aspect of the sale process. It could be classed as the most valuable, your client data. Overall, preparation for any sale is key to obtaining the best deal, and part of that is being able to evidence your information and ideally having it mineable. So what data should we consider as key data? It could be said all data is vital, but so much can be stored and it's hard to validate, so our advice here would be to focus on a few critical areas that are likely to have the biggest impact on your valuation. Today we're going to be looking around client profiles, so looking at your key client data, ages, addresses, contact information. Increasingly, we're seeing the need to be able to group that data by households. Also looking at the provider spread or the advice spread and the types of plans that you have income coming in from. And most importantly, being able to link this together, so having a look at the income and the AUM for your information and seeing a range of data covering all of these areas. As we go through this session, the action that you will take will actually depend upon your timelines. So we'll be having a look at the data within IO, and there'll be some areas that you may choose to do more extensively depending upon how quickly you're looking to sell your business. Without further ado, let's dive into IO and have a look at the type of data you can get. And first of all, let's go through and have a look to see how you can see some missing data on clients and have a few tips about handling this data. We're going to go from Advisor Workplace into MI reports. And the first report we'll be having a look at, I'm guessing, is one you're all going to be familiar with, which is the client list for mail merge. So if we scroll down, we're going to select to run this report. And we're going to tick to only show clients with plans. And for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to include deceased and restricted clients. And in the additional options, we're going to only show clients once. And we're going to export this to CSV. Now, once this is ran, I would immediately suggest you save this as an Excel file type instead of CSV, because you will be working on the formatting of this document. Initially, within this document, we're going to add a filter line to the top row. If you haven't used filters much, it's a great tool to enable you to quickly filter down data, look for outlying items, and also look for blanks within an area. So we highlight the top row and then go across to the sort and filter. And you'll see here you have an option called filter. You'll know this is on because the arrows appear. So the first area of this data we're going to have a look at is the service status. Once you've applied a filter, you can click on your down arrow and you can tick to select all, which unticks everything. And in this case, we can have a look at the blank information. So I tick blanks and press OK. And now I can see really quickly and easily which clients don't actually have a service status saved. So I can highlight these and then go back and fill this data in after. Now, one of the things we do suggest is if you've been through a process where you've restricted clients, then you actually update the service status to restricted. This is because when you're running UDMIs, it can play a vital part in being able to filter down your data. If you scroll to the right hand side of this report, you'll see at the very end it will tell you if your client is restricted or not. And you can actually bulk update your service statuses through the data uploader. And so this is a really quick and easy way to be able to maybe add a new service status of restricted, and then you can pull this data through to UDMIs you produce. It's always advised as well at this point to have the advisors have a look at the service categories and make sure they're still appropriate for their clients. Let's have a look now at some of the key bits of information on this page. So I want to have a look at dates of birth. We've seen quite often that through human error, dates of birth have been put into the future or blank. So here I'm ticking again to unselect everything, and then I'm going to select the future ones and scroll down to the bottom and pick any blanks. Once again, I'm just going to highlight this so I've got a really clear idea of what data I just want to have a further look into. After using any filter, it's really important to go back up to the top of the row, and you can either clear the filter by pressing this button or selecting all again. Otherwise, when you do further searches, it will only be on that restricted item of data. So now we've checked out our date of birth, let's have a look at our addresses. Now this set of data, as you can probably gather, is dummy data, and so there are a lot of people living at one address. But for the purposes of this, we're just using it to see where the first line of the address is blank. Generally, we wouldn't expect any clients to have a first line of the address as blank. So once again, we're just going to have a look at those and highlight those to look into them and cleanse them in IO. When we move down to the postcodes, you'll see that for data cleansing purposes and dummy data, we only have half postcodes. You would expect yours to be full, but this is a great one as you scan through, again, just to see any postcodes as you scroll down to your blanks that may look a little bit strange. And again, you can highlight those, tick them, and investigate them later. We're now going to look at some key bits of contact information. Email plays an increasingly important role in today's world and transacting business with clients. And so here, I'm just once again going to look for the blanks. As I scroll through this, I could also check for any email addresses that don't seem quite the right format. And I'm going to highlight those so that they can be investigated later. Remove that filter, and finally, I want to make sure I have some form of contact phone number for my clients. Now, I don't mind if that's telephone or mobile, but I'd like to have one or the other. So on this one, I'm going to select the blanks here, and then on the next column, I'm also going to select the blanks, and this will show me where I have neither. Now on this data, you could choose to use third-party services to go and investigate the integrity of your client data, your addresses, your postcodes, and it's entirely up to you how much further you'd like to take this process. So finally, one piece of data that people find useful is having the age of their clients. In IO, it will export the date of birth. What I did before this presentation was I actually inserted a column to the right and called it age. Now there's a formula in Excel that you can see on the page right now called a dated if formula. And what I've done here is I've told it to use the dated if formula to look at the date of birth, to then look at today's date and to work out the number of years, and it will roll down in this calculation. You can use any date within this formula, but today seemed useful as we were doing this calculation. This will be really good for some of the analysis later on when we start to bring different tables of data together. One of the areas we often get asked about is family and household reporting. Now there is a report in IO, if we go back to the client list and mail merge, where we can link the joint clients. So I've left all the parameters the same, apart from I'm selecting to link joint clients. Once again, I would then export that to CSV. If we go to how this report looks, you'll see it's really similar to the original client list and mail merge report. However, if we scroll across, at the very end of this report we can see the linked clients. This is a great report for having a look and seeing if clients are on the same service status, if they should be, as their spouse, and also for starting to look at how to do household income. Now there is the facility within IO to group a family and mark a head of family to take it further than just the spouse. This is fantastic for administering your clients, especially with the client profitability reporting and the funds under management reporting. And in these areas you can actually select a client and then pick to view the family household. Unfortunately though, the ability to extract this data in bulk is quite limited. So to do the analysis by household or family grouping, it's worth looking at some other workarounds. If not currently used, there is a field within IO called the migration reference. So this may be filled in if you had a migration from another system, but it might not be needed for anything. If you're looking longer term, you can use this field to create a unique family code and put it in, and then that can be extracted and used in some of the other reports later on. If you're looking for a shorter turnaround, then it might be worth looking at a more manual system. Alternatively, you can use a combination of the last name and say the date of birth to create a unique reference, and then using a variety of manual interventions and also looking at the linked clients, you can change the household reference to link these up. Again, if you save this sheet separately, this can be used later on in some of the Excel formulas to use as part of your analysis. So we can see here that I've linked together Alison with Alison. It's not necessarily a simple process, but it really is worth the effort of going to because of the extended data that it can provide you, and we'll show you some of those reports later on. Now that we've looked at some of the client level data, let's dive into some of the income data. So you've been reconciling your income within Intelligent Office. Let's find out how you can put that data to good use. If we go back to IntelliFlow, Intelligent Office, we can scroll down. There's a report called the Finance and Commission Report. So I'm just going to press to run this report. When you go into here, if the selling advisor is pre-populated with an advisor name, you can simply press the X to clear that and it will report over all advisors within the database. Now the start date and end dates here will actually look at when the data was added to IO rather than the date that income data is in relation to. So I recommend setting some really good parameters and making those wider when you're exporting to Excel, because it will show you the period the income data is related to once it's in Excel, and then you can delete the unnecessary data. So once again we're going to export this to CSV, and here's one I made earlier. So when we look at this page, first things first, we are going to add the filter at the top. And I mentioned you can see the income period. So if I click on this filter here, I've got September through to December as I wanted, but I've actually got some extra data for September 2020. So this allows me to just select that data and then delete it. I then clear my filter. When you're looking at this data, mostly you're going to be interested in the recurring types of revenue. So if we go to column V, this will show us all the different types of income, and it will allow us to remove the ones we're not actually interested in looking in and analysing at this stage. You may also have single premium, lapse income types, and so you can keep in and remove as many as you want. I'm just going to delete those. So now we've got a really nice set of income data, and this can be used for quite a few purposes. If you haven't used them often, a pivot table is a great tool, and once you get used to them, they're really easy to use. So I'm just going to click in this top left hand corner which highlights all of my data. If I then go to Insert, you can, should you wish, click on Recommended Pivot Tables. And if you want to play around, this is a great way to just have some ideas and it will put them into suggested pivot tables for you. but for our purposes we're going to be entering a blank pivot table, and I wanted to put it into a new worksheet. So for the purposes of today, what I'm now going to do is just show you how simply you can have a look at all the income received by plan type for this 12-month period. So I'm going to click on the fields on the right hand side. I'm going to click on plan type and drag this down to rows. I actually want to see what type of recurring income it is, so I'm going to click on my income type and put it into columns. And I want to see how much for each one, so I'm going to click on the amount and drag this down to value. So really quickly we can now see exactly how much income has been received by these plan types. Alternatively, I may just want to have a look at which provider the income was from, so I can move the plan type back up and drag down instead the provider. This is a really quick and easy way once you have your data in Excel to start looking at it via different methods. We're going to be looking at this income data a little bit more and how we can bring other information into that set of data later on. But first, now let's look at our plan and AUM data. So I'm going to go back to the database and click on Report List. And within here, you should have an option to design a new MI report. If you don't, then speak to your system administrator about your permission settings. When I click this, I simply give the report a name and I select which table I want it to draw the data from. So for this I'm going to select Client and Plan and simply press Add. Now the idea of this report is we want to look at a few bits of key information to check the integrity of our plan data and see where we need to do some cleansing work. In order to run this report, the first thing I need to do is make sure for my role I have permission to run it. So depending on what your role is, you just simply need to tick the box, or if you want it for all roles, just click the top. And again, I'm going to select CSV on here. I'm not going to go into these options too much. There are videos and training courses that will talk more about the UDMI. But let's just go to Output Columns. And I'll chat you through some of the key columns if you want to have a look at your plan data. So I go to Organise the Output Columns. Within here, when you're picking your fields, it's really important to include ones where the references are. So for plans and the IOB number, that would be the sequential reference. And you can then go through and pick as many of these pieces of information as you wish. Common ones will be the plan status, the plan type, whether or not it's a top-up. We can also scroll down and we can see that there is agency information, so your agency status, and then later on there's plan valuation. If you can't find a particular field, you can just type and press search and it will highlight where they are. So within here you just need to select the fields that you want. Scrolling down, you'll also be able to see that you have the client and the advisor information later on within the list as well. Once you have the fields that you want, you simply press Submit, and then from the actions you can select Run Reports. Now you can add input criteria to this information, however I find it easier to do this within Excel. So if we go back to Excel, here's some sample data that I took out of our system. I mentioned the filtering, so on this report what I've actually done is if the plan is a top-up, so if that equals true, I'm going to delete it and remove that filter again. And then also under agency statuses, I can remove anything that's down as not under agency. This is a great report because not only does it tell me what the current valuation of the plan is, it will tell me the date and the method. So what I can do is I can now target where there are no up-to-date valuations. So let's say, for example, I want to know everything that was valued before October. And it allows me to go through these to check if the plans are truly enforced, to check if we are the servicing agents, and then wherever possible to set up an automated valuation or potentially a manual valuation. And recurring activities can then be put on to actually get your valuations up to 100%. It's worth spending the time cleansing your plan data, because once you run this report then it's really quick and easy to add on further pivot tables. And again, here's an example pivot table that we ran on the data, where you can pull out information such as your AUM by plan type, and again you can start to look at provider data. So this has been really good to see how we can pull out individual bits of data. But when you're looking at the value of your business, what's really important is the ability to link these together. So now we're going to go back to our finance and commission report, and we're going to have a look at how we can start to bring in some additional client and plan data and what we can do with that. So I'm going to go to my client list and mail merge, and I can right click, move or copy, create a copy and bring this into my finance and commission report. There's a formula in Excel that's really helpful, and it's called a VLOOKUP. So when I go back to my finance and commission report, what I want to actually do is start to bring in the client's age, the service status. So let's have a look at how we would bring in the client age. Firstly, I'm going to insert a column. I'm just going to call that age. Now there's two things to remember when doing a formula called a VLOOKUP in Excel. We're going to use this to look at the unique client reference number, and we're going to tell it to find that client reference number in our client list and mail merge and bring us back the age. So what we need to do is bring the client reference number to the first column of our spreadsheet. We then need to take off our filter and replace it, because you'll notice there's no filter on that first column now. And we simply need to sort that A to Z. If I go back to my finance and commission, from my formulas I can simply select a VLOOKUP and tell it what I want it to do. So in this particular circumstance, I want it to look at the client reference number. I want it to find that client reference number in this set of data, and then I want it to return the age from column 15, and if it can't find it, I want it to tell me. So I've literally just counted the numbers of the columns there. And once you've done this, you can simply drag down and paste the results from this formula. So as I drag this down, it's quite a lengthy report. What this then allows us to do is start to bring the client age profile into some of that analysis for the income. So going back to a pivot table, and just to show you one more useful tool here, I'm going to highlight the data and insert the pivot table. This time you'll see that actually my age hasn't appeared. If this happens, simply go up to your menu, click refresh all, and now it's appeared. And I'm going to put my age in the filters. I'm then going to bring down plan type, income type, and amount as before. Now when you have something in the filter, you can click the menu button here and you can select one age or multiple. However, what you don't want to have to do in this situation is keep clicking and unticking boxes. So a really handy tool is something called a slicer. If I press up here to insert my slicer, I'm going to pick age. You'll see now that I've got a really easy interface to have a bit more of a look at this data. So let's say I want to see all the data for people 50 to 54. I simply highlight it, and now it's showing me all of that plan and income data for that age group. To reset, I simply click to clear the filter. I can change this, so by clicking on the pivot table I can say actually I want to have a look at the income data by provider, or again I could start to look at my client segments and I could bring through a service status through doing another lookup. So hopefully now it's really easy to see how you can start to build this set of data. We mentioned earlier household references, and we also built that plan information data. if I go down to a report that I ran earlier, these columns in yellow are where I've just simply brought in the key plan data. I've brought in the client list and mail merge. I've brought in my household reference. And I've actually done another UDMI to get the fee percentage. So the columns in yellow are where I've then just done a simple VLOOKUP to bring that data in. As you're going through this, what you can then simply do, the tools you've acquired using pivot tables, is if I go to this example chart, I can now see by household who's within that household. You'll notice these are once again dummy data and so don't bear much relevance, it's just for the purposes of demonstration, but I can see the income type, and yet again I can play around with this as much as I would like to. So I have here just the income levels, but to give another example, on this chart we can see that the client, all the plans the client has, the plan value, any fee percentages, and then also the income all on one chart. So it literally does become that anything, well almost anything is possible once you start to bring these pieces of data together, and that's all from a couple of simple reports and a few key Excel formulas. So what we haven't covered yet is just there will be outliers to these situations and pieces of data that are not as easy to analyse. We've been looking primarily at plan level data. There will be client paid fees and ongoing fees that you would need to have a look at. Also, as we've gone through and extracted the pieces of information, we do recommend that you go through and cleanse these, then you can rerun the reports, but it helps identify what data needs cleansing really easily. So let's now just revisit what our objectives were for this session. So it was to have a high-level understanding of the marketplace, to understand what data can affect the value for your business, understanding some of those key reports in I/O, and then looking at some of the Excel functionality and formulas to help you link those reports together and really understand the quality of data within your firm, and then start to look at any data that may need cleansing. So advisor outsourcing. How can we help you in your journey to cleanse your data or to prepare your business for sale? So we work with firms to assess their data to cleanse that. We work with income reconciliation to provide reports on any exceptions and issues that they may be facing or to actually implement that within businesses. And we offer valuation management services where we can train individuals within your firm or manage that as an outsourced service to get you to 100% valuations. And we also provide administration services. Following today, if you'd like to learn more about these, would like any further details on the Excel formulas, we are offering a free online discovery session with us. And once you've done that, there'll be options to actually have a discounted database assessment and action planning session on your data. Just let us know that you watched this webinar for Change the Game. So if you have got any questions at all, or any comments, we'd love to hear from you. And here's the contact date that you can find us on. If you'd like to book an online appointment for a discovery session with us, you can simply drop me an email, give me a call, connect on LinkedIn, or book an online appointment through our 10 to 8 facility. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and I hope it's given you some ideas to now have a look at your own company data.